And you're welcome back to Off the Ball here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 7. Our feature interview this week is with one of the most interesting and engaging people in hurling, Derek McGrath. Derek's backstory: All-Ireland minor finalist 1992. De La Salle College in Waterford guided them to All-Ireland Colleges titles in 2007 and 2008. Then he led De La Salle to a county title in Waterford before taking the reins with the Dacia, with the Waterford senior hurlers. League title in 2015. Then in 2017 they got to the All-Ireland final, beaten by 3 points by Galway. The closest Waterford have come to an All-Ireland since 1959. In 1963 they also lost by 3 points to Kilkenny. What's Derek doing now? Well, let's find out. Derek, how are you getting on?
Grand, John, how are you? Not a bother.
Great to talk to you. And what is occupying your time at the moment? I know you're teaching down in De La Salle and Waterford. Have you got your toe in the water with the Laois minors at the moment? Are you kind of taking it easy when it comes to hurling? Because it was such a manic 5 years for you in charge of Waterford there between 2013 and 2018.
Yeah, look, I'm involved with the Laois minors the last 2 years, enjoying it. Obviously not as probably immersive as the Waterford project was over the 5 years. But you know, an ideal scenario in that, I suppose, expectations probably lowered in Laois, with all due respect to Laois, but really enjoying the interaction with the boys. And I suppose, look, I'm a teacher by trade, and I would have always started the whole coaching process dealing with young guys between 12 and 18 years of age in school, in class and in the field, I suppose. And yeah, certainly enjoying it, albeit, like, you know, when you're talking in long-term projects or you're talking long-termisms, you know, we've underperformed, I suppose, in the last 2 years, beaten by a really good Kildare team and really good Offaly team the year before, but probably a level of realism attached to what we're trying to do, I suppose, is trying to develop players to be ready for Cheddar setup over the next couple of years, but really enjoying it because have been involved with a couple of management teams that are, you know, really, really proactive and good management team. So yeah, enjoying that, and obviously back in school full time. Enjoying being back in school has been difficult the last couple of years, obviously with COVID and that. The young lads, I won't say they're demotivated, but they're, you know, I think people underestimate the actual influence that COVID has had on young people, even in terms of extracurricular and being able to organise stuff that we would normally associate with the holistic approach in school, you know.
1992, you're in a minor final. We're still talking about hurling 30 years later. Isn't it an addiction for you? You're involved with Laois, as you say there. Is this something that is just completely wired into your body and your brain?
Yeah, look, I love it. You know, I and if I'm not involved in it, I'm reading about it, or I'm reading other, I suppose, books around leadership that can kind of maybe give you an edge if you were to get back involved in at that particular level. Yeah, just think about it all the time. I suppose I was lucky enough in that I was a 3-year minor and a 4-year under 21, and I probably had I had a lot of expectation around a senior career that never materialised. Then, you know, that's what can happen. You know, I only played 2 championship matches senior with Waterford, despite being on the panel for 4 or 5 years. So look, that can kind of shape you as well in terms of your experience of not quite making it as an intercounty player, albeit I played 20 odd years in my own club in De La Salle. But you know, that you think about it all the time, and you look at how the game has changed. And I even think back to the 92 minor All-Ireland final. You know, I was under 16 at the time. I was playing at 11. I was marking a guy called Conor O'Donovan. He actually got man of the match in the final. Brilliant hurler. Micheál O'Donoghue was left half-back for Galway. Nigel Shaughnessy was right half-back. And Franny Ford was their star turner in the middle of the field. And you look at the progress they've made in coaching or otherwise, or, you know, you bump into guys. I remember the day of the All-Ireland in 17 after the match, I bumped into Conor O'Donovan for the first time since 1992. And obviously in 92 I had a full head of white blonde hair and I was about 10 stone, and things changed, you know, as well as the game changed, people change as well. Very
good. Are you from a hurling family, Derek?
Yeah, well, not particularly. You know, my dad, who passed away there last January, 12 months, he probably a musical family more than anything. My dad would have played the drums in a local kind of, you know, dance band, shall we call it, and he played the drums in a kind of a fife and drum band here in Waterford as well for years. Mum would have little or no, you know, loves the hurling, but wouldn't go to a match, you know, over the years. Would just be without painting a picture of a typical mother, just hugely supportive in the background and hoping for the best for you, and, you know, doing everything possible to try and, you know, ensure that your educational path and your social path and your sporting path are kind of organised for you, you know, and yet kind of trying to instill in you kind of a good work ethic all the time. So mostly a musical family. You know, Dad would have proclaimed that he won an under-16 championship with Ferryman, but I think, you know, back, my father left school, no secondary school education, if you like, left school at sixth class, family at 10, and was working from 13 years of age, and you know, look, life education, I suppose, is as good education as anything. So no, not really. You know, would have just gone up to the local field at 7 or 8 years of age, and then just would have taken to it from there, you know, and got plenty of support. One thing I didn't do, I suppose, as a young fella, I didn't sample much other sports, you know, and I have a bit of regret around that, looking back. You know, I kind of, parents would have been not strict, I suppose, I don't want to paint a picture, but they would have just wanted me to concentrate on the hurling. And, you know, my approach here in the house here would be a little bit different, that I'd like the boys to experience whatever it is, whether it's theatre school or stage school or choir or rugby or soccer or hurling, and then they can hone in when they make their own mind up themselves.
Yeah, it's important to varied interest, isn't it, Derek? And I found my dad, he passed away in 2002. I'm sorry to hear about your father, Nicky. I read the interview you did with Vincent Hogan in the Irish Independent. I bonded with him over hurling, and he was from Clare, and in 1995 we were at the All-Ireland final, and Eamon Taft scored, and we just looked at each other, and then 97 they won again, and we never really expressed love in a overt way in language, but in our experiences that we shared together in terms of going to matches and being part of the whole Clare experience when they won the All-Irelands that they did. Did you find with your dad and with your extended family that those big days with Waterford and with De La Salle really got that emotional bond going?
Yeah, and look, I think, you know, when your parents do so much for you financially and emotionally over the years, you know, I often talk to the boys in school about this. You know, my father would never told me that he loved me, if you like, or my mother would never have told me, or my sister for that matter. You know, we never proclaimed it. And, you know, look, I was born in 76, so maybe, I'm not sure is that kind of a symptomatic of the child that grew up in the 80s and 90s, but the love was unconditional in other ways. And yeah, look, the attachment, I always remember the league final when we won it in 15, meeting my dad on the field, and he was very emotionally kind of, you know, visibly upset. I have a photograph of it actually at home, you know, and just, you know, you see it that day. You don't need to proclaim your love, but yet with my boys here, like, well, maybe not the oldest boy, but certainly the youngest boy here, Oren, is 8, Fiona's 16, that, you know, you kind of, you're inclined to say to him, look, I'm proud of you, like, and you don't feel as suspicious as you would have compliments from years ago. You know, I remember my dad kind of almost passing kind of cynically remarks about people who say to you, have a good day now, you know, and I think that it's changed in that, but you're trying to get the balance right between support and challenge. I've even noticed, even in the last 3 or 4 years since I've been away from management, that compassion is now seen as, you know, not order of the day, but certainly a part of management, whereas when I was involved, if you were seen as being holistic or compassionate, sometimes, you know, so it's even changed, I'd argue, in 4 or 5 years, that, you know, people are looking out for each other, looking out for their holistic development. And I think that's part of the whole process. But look, to answer your question, in terms of emotive connections with parents around hurling, without a doubt, they're good days, but hugs and kisses on the back of it, very, maybe the odd occasion, but just, it's kind of like a subliminal kind of intangible kind of togetherness, you know, that you can kind of see their pride and you're proud, and you know you're going to remain grounded on the back of good and bad days. So that all comes from home. I think I'd argue that with anybody, you know.
Yeah, I just think love might be expressed in a bit of a different way now. I was born in 78, Derek, not too far from yourself, and my love with my dad was expressed through our love in a shared way of hurling and horse racing, and it just wasn't that was the best way for us to express it at the time before he passed away. And I think that's the old Catholic Ireland. I think things are different now. Like, even as a teacher, has your approach with students changed in the last 20 years?
I'm not sure. I tell you why now. In 1998, I did a HDip in education in UCD, and I think there was a lady called Margaret Lennon that was lecturing on positive reinforcement and positive development. Going into doing the dip, most people would have told you that don't smile till after Christmas, or don't, you know, give them no leeway, and remain ruthlessly kind of focused on their curriculum, and you know, just stay on top of them would be, you know, I would have heard this kind of old adage, but I remember listening to her in a lecture, and she talked about the whole idea of meriting the boys and, you know, giving them support and but yet challenging them, you know, that balance. So I don't think it's changed a huge amount. What's probably changed is is, you know, we spent the last number of years looking at a huge amount at collaborative learning, group learning, you know, peer sharing, learning, all that kind of stuff, whereby you're almost trying to empower, you know, your students, I suppose. So, you know, anyone that studied leadership will know all about the Goleman's leadership styles, from dictatorial to coercive to authoritative, etc. So I think I've seen other people change, and I've changed in regard to, sometimes you would feel that your natural empathy would be able to solve things, but I've gotten better at delegating responsibility to people that are qualified in the area of counselling or therapy or support services within school. And also, I probably got a little bit more better organised in terms of, you know, even when I was doing the hurling in 15 and 16, when I took a bit of a parental leave there, I just found myself thinking about the hurling so much that, you know, you'd be in the middle of a you know, a lesson or whatever, and you know, your phone is ringing, and you're kind of saying to yourself, what do I need to do here? I need to kind of organise my thought process. So I've gotten a bit better at organising my lessons and preparing my lessons in terms of planning and that kind of stuff, you know, whereas other years you would kind of go on a tangent away from things, which is important, I think, particularly when you're teaching English. I think it's important to be able to go on that tangent and feel the mood of a classroom. Yeah. And I think that's important in a training session as well, you know.
There's a clear link, isn't there, between you got to tailor maybe teach individual to a degree. When you got a large class but a large squad, you got to know what makes people tick. You got to know how to motivate people. To me, it seems like there's a clear link between what you would have been doing as a teacher and then also then coaching with the colleges and then progressing into a senior county manager.
Yeah, I think there is. Because, look, there's an element of vocation to it as well, without, you know, bigging up teaching. I remember reading Jamie Barnes' article 2-3 years ago, where he talked about, he was kind of it was misconstrued in the media, in that he said, I'm gone back to teaching because of hurling, you know, and I remember Jamie didn't point out what I'd know about Jamie is how suitable he would be to teaching, how kind he is, how generous he is, how, you know, organised he is, how focused he is, and how big of an influence he would be on young boys and girls in the classroom. So the point, to go back to your original point in terms of the link, I think there's a huge link in terms of just dealing with people. There's also, you know, the thing that people don't point out is you're in front of a classroom with 25 boys, and the reality is there's probably 10 of them that'll be way more intelligent than you as the teacher, you know. And I think, you know, we'll know more. We'll be going a route, computer science route, maybe take over the family farm route, maybe an electrician route, maybe a teacher route, maybe a doctor route. And I think you have to kind of try and tap into all those, the mechanics of how they think, which is challenging. And, you know, you can be lazy and not tap into that, or you can be hardworking and tap into that. And I think that's where the correlation is with management as well. You know, you're going to have guys in your team, I suppose. Take Kevin Moore, loves feedback. Dara Fives loves feedback. Tyg de Burke would relish on just a nod and a kind of a simple instruction. And so, you know, I think there's a clear correlation with that. And also I think there's a correlation between schools should be a happy environment, should be challenging environment and supportive, but it should be happy and it should be fun. And yet there should be an element, as I said, of the pursuance of excellence in school as well, the best of your ability. So, I think that's core. The correlation is absolutely huge. That's why I suppose you see a lot of teachers at it, I suppose, you know.
Yeah, and would there be a strong, in a way, literary influence between the books you read and the teaching that you give and stuff that you've said in the dressing room, messages, stories, ways of thought?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I mentioned it there. Even my parents and a late cousin of mine, Brian Flynn, had a big theatrical background, and we used to follow his shows everywhere. He wrote Michael Collins the musical, and he wrote actually a parody or a kind of a spoof version of Aikino. He wrote the All Star Wars, you know, and he unfortunately passed away a number of years ago. And he was a big influence on our family in general, in that he'd create, he'd look at hurling or look at the whole storytelling associated with the drama and the theatre of sport and of theatre itself, I suppose. And, even lyrics of songs and motivationally, I find, films, key parts of movies, key parts of books, I suppose, or literature that you kind of say, well, that's similar to the struggles of A, B, or C at the moment, or that's similar to what somebody is going through, you know. And I think, look, I've gone full circle on that, from the books that you read or that are concerned with seeing things from other people's point of view, i.e. Mockingbird and Of Mice and Men, to Eddie Jones's leadership book over Christmas, and I read a great book, Hostage at the Table, by George Colwriter as well, over the last 6 or 8 months, that I keep going back to. And look, the old school ones, like, not the old school ones, but The Score Takes Care of Itself and Edge by Ben Littleton, you read all those, and look, sometimes I think you read those to reinforce, geez, you know what, we weren't too far away in terms of how we were thinking psychologically, or how we were thinking in terms of preparation. And even nowadays, when you look at the fashionable nature of having 2 in the full forward line, or 1 in the full forward line, or a deep 6, or forwards tracking back in the back line, you're heartened with the fact that the game has evolved in the sense that you know, people are tapping into outside ideas to feed into what they want to do themselves. So yeah, look, I think it's fascinating where it has gone and where it will continue to go.
There was a progression for you, Derek, obviously, between winning a county title with De La Salle, then to managing Waterford for the first time after you got the job in 2013. There must have been a chasm, a Pacific Ocean, between the guy who played a couple of times under Liam McCarthy and the man then who walked into an intercounty job when the intercounty scene had become an industry.
Yeah, and you know what, John, I'm not saying I wasn't prepared for it, because I managed De La Salle in 12 and 13, you know, and I remember the job was coming up then. Michael Ryan had vacated the post, and you know, it was kind of not a player-led coup, but certainly a kind of an era of Michael's term had ended, so they were opening it up again. And I was saying to myself, right, I go for it. But I did plan, you know, for the year, even when I was in De La Salle, my last year in De La Salle as senior manager, I was kind of saying, look, if this comes up, I'm not going to rule myself out of it, because. So I think the natural confidence that comes with having success with your club team, on the back of having success with your colleges team, feeds into a confidence that you'll be able to do it. Having said that, when you get the phone call from the county chairman after going through the interviewing process that, you know, the job is yours, if you like, there is the kind of an epiphany moment where there's a dawning in terms of the seriousness of this particular job. And I think that influenced me particularly badly in the first year with Waterford, in that it was almost kind of I'll impress the lads here now, a little bit immature almost, you know, a little bit kind of I'll make sure that when they come to training, the training is absolutely nailed down, the gear is it looks after itself, they'll have the best physio services, they'll have the best, you know, of S&C, they'll have the best of everything. And I think you forget then the edge that you need in terms of your on-field processes, if you like, you know, your what matters in terms of performance, if you like. And I think it becomes a little bit of a kind of a, not a clap on the back, but everything is going well. So that chasm is as much in your actions in terms of who you surround yourself with, and what you can, you know, how you go about your business. I think you need a bit of rawness as well, if that makes sense, you know.
Where did you get that edge?
Well, I think I got it from a disappointing first year, being relegated and being beaten by Wexford in the championship in 14, and I got it from becoming more authentic, I suppose, and actually saying to myself, right, what needs to be done here? Who needs to be involved? The gut the year before was kind of saying to myself that some of the elder guys involved in the panel were, I would have seen elements of kind of, you know, I would have seen elements of guys that were involved in the panel the previous year, and almost pretending to be leaders, if you like, pretending to be really running this kind of thing, you know, and almost, you know, and I kind of left it go, if you like, and I nipped that at the end of the first year, and kind of went with a very, very young panel, brought in a huge amount of the 13 minors that have been successful, guys that are in their 8th or 9th year now, ironically, when you think of Austin is only 27, I think, and I think this year will be his 9th year or 10th year at Waterford, and the Bennetts, etc., Patrick Hearn, and made a few changes, I suppose, a couple of high-profile omissions. The other thing that was noticeable, John, I suppose, in the first year was there was an air of suspicion in the air based on how Michael had vacated the job, and sometimes that can permeate the group. It can hang around you for the first year. I saw it with Micheál O'Donoghue in his first year after Anthony Cunningham. I see it sometimes. You know, when somebody comes in on the back of a player coup, it's nothing to do with you as a manager, but there's a kind of it hangs around, if you like, for a mayor, and that's not an excuse, but I would have felt that in the air, you know, as regards even I had a good relationship with the board, but overall, in terms of just, you know, that kind of noise that sometimes permeates its way on the outside. You know, I'm an Everton supporter, and I see it with Benitez over the last number of weeks. You know, and I just see sometimes when you make decisions, and you know, and then it became very difficult in the winter of 15 to kind of stand over the decisions you've made, I suppose.
Everton fan, I'm a Spurs fan. We're both suffering in different ways, Derek. Was there a Derek McGrath philosophy? Because there's all this talk about the sweeper at the time, and sometimes that might have been criticised. But when I look at Limerick winning the All-Ireland back in August, a lot of the balls were just given out to the half-back line. Then they would distribute from that. Like, did you take sporting influences from other places? Like, we all know Guardiola is a false nine, or Charles Hughes influenced possibly Jack Charlton and Maximum Opportunity, and it was getting players into the channels and press before the press, and we know about the pressing game, Jurgen Klopp and all that kind of thing. Is there a hurling philosophy that you have, or was it just a case at the time with Waterford that was the best way to maximise the players I had?
I love that question now, because it gives me an opportunity, I suppose, to kind of, first of all, in terms of influences, Guardiola would be a big influence in terms of I just would have read about him. I very much believe in the superiority in midfield that he talks about, and I love the flexibility of people scoring from everywhere. You know, I think that there was elements of that in our attack of the All-Ireland in 17, where Jamie Barron and Kevin, I think, scored 5-18 between them from play. In the run up to the All-Ireland. So I love the whole idea but I also love the whole idea of not the Geoghegan press, but the idea that, you know, if you've read Klopp, I think it's Hogstein's or Hoffenstein, I can't remember who wrote the bit about Klopp, where he talks about not being able to breed with the type of football or the type of soccer that you play, not being able to kind of have a second to kind of be able to, you know, take a breath for what you see in front of you. So I think that transfers itself into a manic, aggressive work ethic all over the pitch. And the one misnomer for me, the big misnomer is I suppose that, and in 15, I suppose, and this is, again, I've said this truthfully over the years, in 15 when we won the league, we actually didn't even play with the sweeper. We actually just told Tadhg de Burca not to follow his man out the field. We told 5, 6 and 7 to hold their spots, very like what Diarmaid Byrnes and Declan Hannon do. And we told our half forward to come deep into midfield, and we told one of our full forward, and at the time it was Colin Dunford, come into the middle of the field and get forward and break in packs, which is what I see Waterford doing, I see Limerick doing, I see everybody doing. In 16, we actually changed that to having 2 extra midfielders, still allowing Tadhg to sit and hold the spot. So we'd have a wall of 6 across the middle of the field. We might play with 1 or 2 inside. And in 17, in actual fact, when we were beaten by Cork in the Munster Championship semi-final, again, we tried that system where we had kind of 2 out in the middle of the field, everyone swarming forward at pace, and Cork caught us out on it because Tadhg was in no man's land in terms of what to do with Conor Lehane, and it was a little bit too much grey. So we actually changed to an out-and-out sweeper for the last 3-4 games of 17. So we played for the first time against Offaly in the qualifiers, scored 135, and with an out-and-out sweeper, played Kilkenny the next day, played Wexford, Cork, and played Galway with out-and-out sweeper. So believe it or not, in my term in Waterford, in 5 years I've been involved, we actually played with a sweeper, an out-and-out sweeper, 5 times. The other system of play is a system of play that's widely used now by most teams, which is corner forward comes out from the full forward and an extra midfielder. There's a wall of 10, 11 and 12, 8, 9 and that extra midfielder in the middle of the field, and it allows your centre back to free himself up on different occasions. And does that irk me or annoy me when I you know, when you hear the kind of the sweeper mentality? It doesn't anymore. I'm actually heartened by the fact that I think people are more aware of it. I've actually spent the last 3 weeks, John, here at home watching Limerick from behind the goal, and invariably Barry Nash and Declan Hannon and Diarmaid Byrnes are nearly free for nearly the whole match, and all their attacks come from there. And the reason they're able to be free is because Garrod Hegarty, Cian Lynch and Tom Morrissey are only about 5 yards away from them, and they're doing their donkey work as well as creating on the other side. So I read a great quote from Klopp there the other day. He said, we recognise, he said, that defensive structure is very important to be creatively offensive or to be offensively creative. And that's the philosophy. But even more so, and I know I'm gone on a bit of a rant here, but even more so, I would say that philosophy for a manager is actually based on one word: connection. You know, the law of reciprocity, where you give your heart and soul to a team, you go on a journey together, and it's reciprocated. I see it with, you know, the charisma of Klopp. I see it with the work ethic of Guardiola. I see even people talking about Andy Farrell and the kind of the environment he has created at the moment as player-led. I read Peter O'Mahony saying it was the most enjoyable. And I heard a brilliant interview with yourselves actually last Friday week. I think it was with Ger and can't think, you know, the Friday night racing with a guy called McGrath actually.
Jerry McGrath.
Yeah. And I heard him talking about the bloodstock and his passion for it. And I kind of said to myself, going home, I was coming from somewhere in the car, and I said to myself, this is a guy now that has the exact philosophy in his head as regards what real management is. It's about, you know, not being a reflection of yourself, but just absolutely never working alone on the field or off the field, and putting your heart and soul into stuff, and not being afraid of the consequences of going all in. You know, even Brady this week when he retired, he said he's not able to go all in. And the reason I haven't got involved in county management, senior inter-county management over the last few years, is you have to be ready to go all in. And when you're ready to go all in, that's your philosophy.
Why then are Limerick so far ahead of everybody else? They won 3 of the last 4 All-Irelands. They scored 318 in the first half of the All-Ireland final last year, Derek. They had 12 All-Stars on the team, a record. Why are they where they are and other counties are not at the moment?
Well, a number of things. First of all, you talk about philosophy, you talk about connection. They clearly play for their manager. They clearly play for Connacht. I don't think you can underestimate the role that Caroline Curran has there. Just again, watching from afar, I don't think you can underestimate the role that Sean O'Donnell has in the backroom team in terms of analysis. This guy is a different level. He also worked with Ballygunner, different level in terms of analysis. And so I think kudos to that. I think there's a great humility to that particular group led by John as well, right? So, and I think obviously in terms of the overall, you know, resourcing of the package, it seems to be, you know, hugely beneficial to the group. And that's not saying it's because of money, but just the whole package is very successful. But look, I'll take it back. In 2017, Limerick were beaten by Kilkenny in the first or in the second round of the championship. And I rang John Kiely. I went to college with John, and I was just trying to get a load on and how Kilkenny were, because we were playing and we had played awfully, and I wanted to see how Kilkenny were against them, etc. And, you know, we were just talking, and he was saying, look, he said, we were trying to get the short game going and we were getting a bit of stick, etc. So every journey starts somewhere, which is the hope for most people, that every journey starts with a kind of a, you know, epiphany moments where you know where you want to go. So Limerick are ahead because A, their background team. B, I think they have a collection of players at the moment that are extremely talented, grounded, intelligent. You know, you take Hegarty, Lynch, Morrissey, Peter Casey, Flanagan, Gillan. They know what they're doing, and they mix lovely, that whole idea of. I read Joe Quaid during the week. He said, I hear a lot about system. He said, but God, Limerick do the simple things better than everyone else. That's fair enough. But Limerick have a really, really good defensive system, and they have a lot of their best players are in their backs in terms of their creators. Sean Finn gets a ball, it's never wasted. Nicky Quaid gets a ball, it's never wasted. Diarmaid Burns can go long, he can go diagonal, he can go short, he can attack. And Declan Hannon just dinks it 10, 15 yards into your midfielders. And everybody knows their job, and they're not afraid to make mistakes. So, brilliant backroom team, brilliant set of players. And you know what? I just think there's a kind of a group intelligence there that is able to kind of feed into whatever kind of problem is in front of them. You know, even half time in the Tipperary match last year, the corrective analysis, I'd say, is on par with most kind of Champions League rugby teams, I'd say, in terms of the way they're able to fix whatever's in front of them. And I think that's noticeable.
Yeah.
And having said that, I think the one team that are set up, if you like, to be most competitive with them are our own lads down here.
And we saw the vote of confidence, Derek. We're speaking to Derek McGrath here and Off the Ball, the former Waterford senior hurling boss. We saw the vote of confidence that Liam McCarthy and Mikey Bevins showed in the fact that Tipperary were hovering and they stayed on with Waterford for another year. Tyg de Burke is back. He mentioned him earlier on. The Ballygunner lads are in an All-Ireland final. Shane Bennett, Pork Mahoney, Desi Hutchinson, all talented hurlers. I know last year they got beaten in the semi-final, but the year before was one that really struck home with me. The way they finished against Kilkenny in that semi-final, that was that showed to me that there's something there, and there's a youth there, and there's a vibrancy there, and if they can recapture that, they might be able to put it up to Limerick this year.
Yeah, look, I think they reached the line in the sand moment, 2 years ago, if you like, and the players are hungry now. The other thing is noticeable is that I think outside the Earl Daly and Shane Bennett, none of the rest of them are playing Fitzgibbon. Their age profile now is, they're at the age, 27, 28. I watched Waterford train last Tuesday. Tyg trained fully. I was just, watching him, and I think Tyg is ready to go. I don't think you can underestimate how good a player this young man is. A young man now, 28, I suppose now. But what a fillip it will be for us to have Tyg back doing what he does best, which is marking, sweeping, combining all the modern centre back role, if you like. He's able to do it all, and he's also able to nip a couple of points. So the other thing I'd say, and again, maybe I'm an eternal optimist here, but if you really watch the first 15 minutes up to the waterbreak of last year's semi-final, Waterford physically put it all on the line against Limerick, all into it. Their third Saturday in a row, or their third Sunday in a row, put everything into it, right? And missed 5 or 6 frees, put well 4 or 5 points up during the waterbreak. Again, if you go back a year previous to that, the Munster final, particularly, where Waterford had Limerick really, really rattled. I think there's a nice rivalry building up between Waterford and Limerick, and I think if there's a team that can not mirror what Limerick do, but have the short game, the game whereby the backs are back helping or the forwards are back helping their forwards, they're breaking at pace, they're keeping the ball a bit better, and they're delivering it into a 1-man, 2-man full forward, like perhaps of Desi Hutchinson and maybe even with Porrick back this year, or Stephen Bennett, or whoever's going to be inside. Remember, Tyg will probably free up Shane Bennett to the forwards, which will be another fill-up for the forward line. And I think they're the team. The other thing is the Cal decision. It's a huge decision, as regards just the motivation for the lads, from the lads, the trust, the sense of loyalty that's obviously been built up over the last year and a half, and the sense in the decision, in that, not just on the back of Padraig Maher's decision to retire this year, but, I think Waterford are a good bit ahead of the group that are just under. So I think there's Limerick, and I think Waterford, and I think there's a bit of a gap then to the rest of the party. And I think we're confident in the fact that when we have the lads back, if Ballygunner can annex the crown next Saturday, I think it'll be another boost. Because I heard Padraig Mahoney talking openly about not being able to wait to go back into the Waterford camp, and Desi Hutchinson similarly. It's not, it's a good, happy camp, and we have a couple of exciting young lads. Corrick Daly, Earl's younger brother, Mark Fitzgerald, and even next year, Patrick Fitzgerald, a good young lad inside in our school here. Brilliant addition to Ballygunner. He will be next year's club champion, but he can't play senior intercounty next year. But the future is very bright in Waterford, and it's something to look forward for the year ahead.
I had a question in my head, Derek. When are Waterford going to win the All-Ireland Senior Hurling title? And the answer seems to be from you, maybe not too long away.
Yeah, and look, and again, as an ex-manager and someone, I actually keep a lot of distance from the players now, because you just the perception around Waterford for probably when I finished, I suppose, would have been, he'll be in touch with the players all the time. So I actually have rarely, if ever, text them. I text them before the All-Ireland final. I think a few of them in 2020, the winter All-Ireland. Obviously, my dad was very ill at the time, and I just texted him to say, geez, best of luck and all this kind of stuff. And you kind of remain, you maintain the link that way. But I purposely wanted to give a bit of space, in that you want to give space to management and players to be able to, and I'm often in omerta fashion, just watching the training, because I just love watching training to see can I pick up something and learn something from Beavens in particular, who's really, really a quality coach, like in terms of the pace that they train at. So you're trying your best not to build up the team so that people say, oh, you built them up for a fall, or but the realistic ambition of the team this year, will be to win an All-Ireland. And I think we're the closest by far to take down Limerick. And look, when we meet them in the second round of the championship, I think we're due to go down to the Gaelic grounds. But what I will say is I don't think it'll be the only time that we'll meet them this year.
Interesting stuff. Is your heart broken from what happened in 2017, Derek?
A bit, yeah, because, I was trying to write a few notes to the Ballygunner players that went. We have a big day in school next week, and that, all the panel that of Ballygunner's panel, Barry Ian Kenny, the 25 of the 26 went to the school, and I'm De La Salle club, obviously, and sometimes you have an element of tribalism within your Waterford and within setups, but I'd be as genuinely happy if Ballygunner win the club based on what Barry Coughlin and Stephen O'Keefe and Philip Manny and Pádraig Manny and Peter Hogan and Shane Sullivan, all these guys have given Waterford and have given us in the school over the years. So to answer your question in a roundabout way in terms of heartbreak, you're hoping first of all that Ballygunner get over the line, so that will give it a boost. But yeah, look, I think about it all the time, and I was penning out a letter to the Ballygunner boys that I'm going to give to them there, give them to Philip in school on Monday, and I was just writing down things that maybe we got wrong in the run up to the All-Ireland, and I was trying to think, and we didn't get a huge amount wrong, but I don't know that we put enough focus straight away on the match itself, on the game itself, on how we win this game, and and being as authentic as they can be when we play the game. And that means, for Ballygunner, it means learning from the semi-final 2 years ago against Ballyhale, where Philip followed TJ Reid 100 yards from the goal. I think Ballygunner will play their game, which will see Philip sit back. It'll be, as I described a few minutes ago, with the half forward line back, one extra forward out, and use the ball off the shoulder and use their kind of silken skills to try and get over the line. So that's the regret, I suppose, that we weren't more of ourselves in the All-Ireland final. And, it's just the winter of 17 where you hear people saying they're very close, and you actually know that you might be actually losing a small bit of an edge. That's more of a difficult winter to kind of think about than anything else as regards what you would have done differently there. I think I would have, dispelled any notion that I wasn't going back straight away and kind of said, look, we're going to go back at this for 2 or 3 years now, and this is where it's going to take us with a new kind of plan. But maybe in time, you never know.
Don't be too hard on yourself, Derek. You got to, I suppose, remember that Waterford, 2008 was Kilkenny at their peak, and there was no contest. It wasn't a game that had any competitive edge to it. This was the closest Waterford got since 1963. There's always a story of the winners, and Galway did everything right. And Galway had their close runs in the previous, since 1988 until 2017. Yeah. They had so many missed chances. So, but I do get the sense from the way you've spoken to me in the last 35 minutes, you've a bit of unfinished business here, whether it's with Waterford or another county. There's something in you that might get back on that sideline.
Oh yeah, look, I had a couple of opportunities there, and you need to be ready, and I think maybe the readiness comes with, obviously huge happenings in our life, and that we lost my father, and that, I was doing a master's in applied psychology and positive psychology, and I parked that, and I'm going to go back at that now, and I parked that when Dad died, and kind of just for a couple of months, and I went, different things kind of, that probably just interfered with the process of going all in, if you like, and not that they were things that, anyone's fault, if you like, but it's, things that you have to kind of say to yourself, right, what's the priority here now at the minute, and how do you deal with those? But yeah, I'd love to get back involved, but it would have to be right, and everything would have to be right, and I would have to be right, and I am on the road to being right. I'm not struggling or suffering in any way, but you need to be ready. You need to have good people around you. You need to be kind of maybe less sensitive than I was in 13 and 14. I was very good at dealing with it in 15, 16 and 17. And, you just need to be hardened towards what you want to do and how you want to do it. And as I said, I'm heartened by the more information that's now available in punditry and in analysis, I suppose, in general, and that people are now talking around systems, they're now talking around pockets, whereas they're now talking around 1 and 2 man full forward lines, whereas, there was a little probably, when that was happening coming on stream at first, I suppose there was a little bit probably of hyperbole when it came to the analysis on it. So I think it's a good thing. People are learning, and I'm learning myself the whole time. So look, yeah, I want to be ready, and I will be ready, please God.
It's interesting to talk about statistics and analysis and the depth of the game. And I was lucky enough to watch an All-Ireland final live beside the dugout one year, and the difference in the I suppose, vision of watching the game that played that way, in the speed that you realise how fast the game is and the skill of the players. And I don't think people in the upper stands really understand the way the game is played at that level down below. You do get a definitely different perception. But I have to find, I went to my first hurling game, Derek, in 1987 as an 8-year-old. I'm kind of conflicted about hurling at the moment. It's always been my favourite sport. I've always loved the skill of the game, the speed, the ebb and flow, the closeness of the matches, the fact that, like, even 2004 Waterford Cork in that Munster final, it was just incredible. Like, it was just, and I love the way Waterford played under Justin McCarthy, that the kind of swashbuckling, freestyle, off the cuff style, the characters in the team, the lack of helmets. Obviously, you need them now for safety. But I'm conflicted with the game at the moment, Derek, because I'm kind of looking at Limerick scoring 318 in an All-Ireland final in the first half. It's a routine to get a point now from over 100 yards. Is the ball wrong? Is the ball too light? Are the bosses too big? Because it seems to me that goals matter less now. Maybe the players are just supremely conditioned now. Maybe they're just the best they've ever been in terms of skill. But I miss the chaos. I miss the breaking ball around the middle of the field. I miss the catches in the air. I miss the close run battles and the kind of the stick work. Am I coming down the wrong path here, or do you kind of get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying, and I get what you're saying in terms of within the systematic approach. Sometimes you see the one-on-one battles as much as you would anymore. Is it more zonal in terms of marking? Do you see someone taking someone down, a la kind of Niall O'Leary took down Tony Kelly last year, or Caleb Lyons follows Tony Kelly? I still think you see those elements of it. I just think the skill level was never higher. I think the application of the players was never greater. I think that we spend a lot of time giving out about, the backroom team, there's 20 in it, what are they there for? I'd be the opposite. I would say that, a lot of these people in the backroom team are actually contributing to the game in the sense that they've done their analysis, they've contributed to the lifestyle habits of those particular players around nutrition, around psychology. So I'm afraid to say that I would come down on the direct opposite, and I think the game has never been better. And I think the ball is not the problem. The Boston, the hurley are not the problem. I think there's no problem, if you want me to be completely honest. Even I read yesterday the stats in between. The biggest jump I think was between 12. It was 17 before 2012, and last year was the highest scoring championship, and the goals came up 2.1 based on the year previous, I think. I think sometimes, when we look at a problem, it invariably be fixed the following year, and around the discussions around defensive or around anything like, 318, in the first half. I remember, All Ireland finals, I think, where there's 1999. What was the other? What was
13-12.
13-12. 13-12. And look, obviously it was a rainy day that day, and there were circumstances that dictated. I just think the players are at the peak of their condition, and I still see elements of swashbuckling, and I still see elements of chaos. I was just watching our own semi-final of 16 during the week, and the first element, there's still elements of chaos, and the chaos comes now, I think, from the unpredictability of where fellas will turn up, whether they're on their full back line and whether they're in their full forward line. I think the flexibility brings the chaos, and look, that in my opinion, I'd hate to see a dramatic change to the weight in the ball, or a dramatic change to the size of the Boston hurley. I think it's getting better, and it will get better.
What about 5 points for a goal? Would that just encourage cynical fouling?
Yeah. No, I'm telling you, more you keep talking about goals, and there'll be more goals than ever this year.
Right. Okay, interesting. I love that 99 final, the claustrophobia of it, the 13-12. I love that in the rain. But I know what you're saying. I get what you're saying. And also, I think that Limerick's full forward line were almost the start point of the winning of that game against Cork last year. Just to finish, Derek, and it's been great to speak to you, Derek McGrath, over the last 40 minutes on Off the Ball here. When I think of hope, I think of Waterford people going up to Croke Park in 2008 or in 2017, and the hope that they would have that maybe for the first time in their lifetime they'd see Waterford win the All-Ireland. And that's the fire that burns, and it still burns. It burns for Mayo people when it comes to their football team. It burned for the Dubs for many years until they became the dominant force in Gaelic football. It burns for Monaghan supporters in football. It burns for every single county. It burns for Galway under Henry Shefflin this year. That's it, isn't it? That's why we live for it. The connection that we have with the ordinary people that we are as well. that you're part of that. You're the man. You got the Bannister's bib. You're getting all these messages, most of them well-wishing, and that connection you have with the public in your own county must be the thing that will always put a smile on your face.
Yeah, and there's nothing like it, to be honest with you. There's no, people even in the aftermath of being involved with Waterford saying, God, thanks for what you did for Waterford. And you were saying, look, we gave it everything we had, and being able to take criticism on the chin as well, being able to take a point or two of conjecture, and no problem with it, and moving on in a spirited way where, you'd always feel that good leadership should percolate down. It should find its way into the realms of the players and the spirit of a dressing room. And that would have happened from Davy Fitzgerald, from Justin McCarthy, from Gerald McCarthy, from Paul Fannin, from Michael Ryan, from Liam Cahill, where you often hear people saying, we're doing a cultural, analysis of the team and we need to do this, A, B and C, when actually some of the culture may well be established, etc. So that connection is like nothing before. And I think, no better place than school to be able to reaffirm that connection, and that, you hear the boys talking in school, Waterford playing this weekend against Dublin, who's going, who's not going, who's going to the Ballygunner game. It forms conversations, and conversations are important, particularly in this climate, around, and also you get a chance to kind of listen to the boys' opinions and people's opinions in general in Waterford around the hurling. But even this week now, with the league starting, with Ballygunner being in the final Saturday week, there's a noticeable layer of optimism there. I read about the attendances at the Munster League games, and the hope for me, as I said, I keep saying it, around Waterford, lies in that kind of, there's the age profile now of the team. The team are ready now to win, to win something big, and I that's where the hope lies for me, and I think they'll do it in a nice steady way through the league, but be ready to explode in the championship, please God.
Derek McGrath, you're an absolute gentleman for speaking to Off the Ball. Have a great year. And look, I hope that Everton do well, but more importantly, I hope that Waterford do well this year.
Yeah, up the Blues. No better.